I've now spoken on college campuses across the country, and mainly when I speak, I'm talking to students. And I stand before them and I try to muster the strongest arguments I can for why they should live a life of integrity, particularly a life of academic integrity, and also more broadly, why they should think beyond themselves and work to build a fairer, more honest, and more caring society. I try to tap into their idealism, their sense of justice, their concern for others. And boy, I'll tell you, sometimes it can be pretty hard work to get through with this message. And the reason for that is not easy to put one's finger on. But let me try. Young people today, I sense, often have an outlook that combines pragmatism and cynicism. They are very attuned to what it takes to succeed, and a lot of them study harder and do more extracurricular activities, certainly than my generation ever did. But many are also surprisingly jaded for their age. Many believe that successful people cut corners to get ahead, and that's the way the world works. A lot of them don't have the time or mental space for the kind of social activism that we once associated with college students. Often the vibe I pick up from students is a kind of numbness. And while many have a narrow sense of personal efficacy from the new technology, from the internet, from the cell phones, they don't feel a larger sense of civic efficacy or have faith that big changes can happen. I don't want to overly generalize here, and I don't venture these opinions to criticize students. The way they are is a reflection of the families they've grown up in, the society they've grown up in, and the values that dominate our times. So it is that when we work to try to change what happens on campus, for instance, trying to reduce cheating, we have to understand the deep cultural and socioeconomic trends that we're up against. The university is not an island. It's more like a delta, heavily shaped by the mighty tides of the current era. And one of the core challenges in this era is to find ways to get students to look beyond their own self-interest, beyond their own anxieties, to overcome their cynicism, and to believe that yes, things can be changed, and that yes, ethical action at the individual level can make a difference. So having planted those initial thoughts, I'd like to start my discussion this morning with the main arguments I present in the cheating culture, broadly describing what's gone wrong with ethics in America and why, and then work my way back to what we can do to change the way students see the world and to create a culture of integrity on campus. This country is not in a period of moral decline writ large. You can't look at the cheating and say that's testament to the fact that everything is going downhill morally, because it's not. In many ways, we're in a period of moral renewal. Consider some of the good news of recent times. Crime is down to some of the lowest levels we've seen in the past 40 years. Drunk driving deaths dropped sharply during the 1980s and 1990s. Domestic violence against women is down. The divorce rate has fallen by 20% since 1979. The abortion rate fell by 30% during the 1990s. Teen pregnancy rates fell by 20% during the 90s. And now the teen pregnancy rate is at the lowest level since 1946. One reason is that fewer teenagers are having sex. More are using protection. They're more responsible. Just like fewer teenagers are using drugs, illicit drugs, or tobacco, or alcohol, fewer are engaging in binge drinking, despite whatever the talk may be about that problem today. It's actually down significantly in the last 2 decades. In many ways, young people are actually much more conservative, responsible, and more cautious than they were in the 1970s. And yet some of the same surveys that document the trend toward greater social prudence among teens also find that young people are more willing to cheat, to get ahead, or lie to get a job. Quite a puzzle. Today it seems that many people, young people but also people of all ages, go through life with 2 separate moral compasses. You got your one compass that shapes your decisions when it comes to issues like drunk driving, drugs, violence, smoking. That compass has been working better lately. But then there's this other compass, completely different it seems, that governs people's lives when it comes to getting ahead, when it comes to academic advancement, money, and success. So the question is, where did we get the second compass? Why is there this divergence? Why do we compartmentalize so much when it comes to morality? And most relevant here, why is that second compass particularly popular among students? Why is that America goes through these periods of rampant selfishness and greed and cynicism? But I also know that we're the most dynamic, most idealistic country on earth. And we are a nation of self-improvement freaks. And these periods these go-go periods are almost always followed by backlashes and periods of reform and new efforts to promote the common good and to hold ourselves to a higher standard. And I'm convinced that we're going to get into one of those periods quite soon. I make many recommendations in my book for how to take on the cheating culture. There are some simple things we can do, like tougher government watchdogs to police corporate America, like better drug testing for athletes, like stricter rules for ethics in professions like law and medicine, which have seen so much corruption lately. This stuff is not exactly rocket science, a lot of it. A lot of these ethical efforts to tighten things up. And a lot of it is beginning to happen in one area after the other. There's been reform in different professions, whether it's the crackdown of steroids in baseball, or more IRS audits of the wealthy, or the growing investigation of the corrupt practices of drug companies. More of the same can make a big dent in the cheating culture. More generally, today's culture totally emphasizes the wrong set of values, equating happiness with wealth and fame and extolling material possessions over human connection and service. And anything that colleges can do to offset these influences can make a difference. Research shows that the old axiom is true, that money doesn't buy happiness. Students need to hear this truth, this empirical truth. And they need to hear it again and again and again, especially when they are making major life choices. There's one more thing that can make a difference, which is for faculty and administrators to keep an eye on their own ethics. Where do so many young people get the idea that they need to cheat in life to get ahead? From adults, that's where. They watch what celebrities or business leaders do, but they also watch how their parents and their teachers and their coaches behave. If they see these authority figures cutting corners, they receive a reinforcing message that cheating is just a part of life. I can't say what sort of ethical dilemmas come up for those in this room. I don't work at a university, but there are plenty of dicey issues, I sense, for anybody For anybody who is in student affairs or athletics or housing or other parts of a big university, there are ethical issues around budgets and how money gets spent. There are conflicts of interest. There are dilemmas that involve requests from up high to provide special treatment or waive certain rules designed to ensure fairness. College athletics, in particular, is a major ethical danger zone on our campuses, especially large universities, large state universities. And for faculty as well, there are always temptations to cut corners in research and writing, as we've seen with plagiarism scandals at Harvard and other institutions recently. You all know the ethical danger zones much better than I do. What I know for sure is this. Those coming up behind us are watching. They are watching. They see more than we might realize. The reporters at school newspapers are often very resourceful. And they watch and they see and they draw conclusions about conclusions that form who they are.